Congratulations, you found the play button, which means you are listening to this episode of the Desert Tiger Podcast. Today is September 20th of 2018, and today on the podcast we're going to be having Tim Millar from Protest the Hero. But of course, before I go ahead and kick that off, I just want to mention that the Desert Tiger Podcast is 100% fan-supported and driven, so thank you so very much to our dedicated fans who are already subscribed to the podcast. If you currently are not, maybe you want to consider hitting that follow or subscribe button on whatever service you are listening to give the show a little bit more of help. That's all you have to do, and it helps out for free. Alright, let's kick it off with PTH.
Music, athletics, arts, and entertainment. The Desert Tiger Podcast with Colton Geschwantner.
And that is me, your host here on every single episode of the DTP. My name is Colton G. I hope that you are having yourselves a wonderful time. I know that I am, and I've already told you once why that is, and that is because of our guest today on the show. He is one of the guitarists in Protest the Hero. It is Mr. Tim Millar, and I am extremely excited for this because I don't know if you know, but Protest the Hero was the first headlining band I ever saw in a smaller venue. So not only are they the first small show I ever saw, but I also credit them as being the band that got me into the screaming side of metal and hardcore and everything else. I know a lot of people from my age group growing up like to credit Alexis on Fire for that, but for me, Kezia was an absolute game changer of an album that not only opened up my mind, but my ears to what was possible. So when the opportunity popped up for me to sit down with Tim before one of Protest the Hero's shows with Coheed and Cambria last week, I could not say no to the opportunity to ask one of the members of my favorite bands of all time all about the music that I have grown up loving. We dive right into things because around the time I got into Protest was around the time that they stopped playing most of their back catalog and kind of just started moving forward with who they were from there on. So we are going to dive into the creation of Kezia, why the band felt like it was such a step forward for themselves. We're going to discuss the label years, the years that they were on Underground Operations and Vagrant Records, which also saw the releases of Fortress and Scurilius. And we're also going to discuss what it meant for the band to move forward as independent singers and songwriters, being 100% control in pretty much everything that they were doing from that moment forward, which end up not only leading to the release of Volition, but also to an extended play album that they released single by single at the time, which eventually ended up taking on the name Pacific Myth. We're going to discuss why they decided to go through those specific release styles, how it worked out for them. We're going to cover a lot of the history of the band. It is a very thorough conversation. I am so excited for you guys to hear it. So let's jump into this.
Whose ragged tooth should rip through flesh, which never nates in
All right, we are here with Tim Millar, guitarist of Protest the Hero. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. How about you?
I am doing fantastic. Just made the drive down from Kamloops today, so...
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so having a good time. You guys are just kicking off a tour with Coheed and Cambria and Crownlands.
Yeah, last night was the first night. Starting here in Vancouver. Trying to stay dry. But yeah, first night was good. It's nice to get one out of the way.
Fantastic. How long are you guys going to be on the road with them for?
It's just under 2 weeks. I think it's 9 shows, so it's definitely short and sweet.
Just a cross Canada type thing?
Yeah, from here to Quebec City.
Okay.
So, but yeah, we're absolutely honored to kind of be a part of the tour. Coheed was a band that I listened to kind of growing up, so it's kind of awesome to kind of now be sharing the stage with them. So.
That's pretty fantastic. Do you guys find that your fan crossover is pretty good, considering that they're not so much on the heavier side, quite so much as Protest is?
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Last night it was kind of hard to tell, but it definitely looked like a pretty good mix. I think we both fall into the area of like the proggy stuff.
Definitely.
So yeah, I do think there's some crossover for sure, but you're hoping that we're playing in front of a lot of new faces and people that would kind of see us and, you know, want to kind of check us out. We've done some support tours where we feel like we're kind of an oddball out and we're not really...
But this one, you guys might fit the ball where some people might walk away being like, you know what, I never actually thought I'd see Protest, but...
Yeah, they might know the name or they might have never even heard of us, and that's kind of what we're hoping to kind of still play in front of new faces. And
Well, I know that tonight's show is a sellout, so hopefully there should be at least a few new faces out there in the crowd.
absolutely.
All right, so I'm a huge fan of the band, so I want to get like right back into right around where I got into things and sort of where you guys kind of took a turn in your career. And that would be Kezia, a album that a lot of people say was not only a turning point for like a Canadian metal scene, not only a turning point for a lot of music fans, including myself, but it was a turning point for also the band, where you guys sort of decided that like you're not going to play any more of your back catalog and you were going to move forward from there. How crucial was it to make the decision to like dedicate yourselves completely forward to the product you were then creating, and what did it take to completely just like throw away everything at that point?
Yeah, I think it might not have been much of a conscious decision, but we felt when we were finished recording Kezia that it was a lot different than the stuff previous, which was kind of us finding our feet. And I think everything about that record, from like the recording process to the sound of the songs and the composition and stuff, was a pretty big departure from some of the earlier stuff. And I think it was also kind of us being young and just being like, this is what the band is now and all that stuff is, you know, whatever. So I think it was kind of a combination of all those things that, you know, helped us kind of make those decisions. And I think another thing was, at that time when we were touring, we usually would be opening for other bands and stuff like that, so we didn't have a whole lot of time to play anyway. So when it came to choosing 5 or 6 songs, it was kind of a no-brainer to choose all the newest stuff instead of kind of promoting the older stuff.
Okay, it's understandable. And then you guys have also been together for, well, the core of the band has been together for quite some time now. How long have you guys actually been playing together?
Yeah, up until about 2013, we had been the same guys, and we had kind of, most of us had picked up our instruments to like start the band. So there's a few years that we don't really count as being the band, because we were just, you know, making obnoxious noise in whoever's parents' basement will let us do it. But yeah, I'd say around the year 2000 is kind of when we started doing that. So now there's 3 of us from the original lineup. So yeah, we've been playing music together for at least 17, 18 years.
Which is pretty fantastic to build a repertoire with those members, and something that between you and other guitarist Luke Hoskin is a lot of people consider Luke the lead guitarist because everybody tries to relegate somebody to those roles, but anyone that like sees you live will see that you guys often like play off each other and are quite often like going like off of each other's lines and doing the harmonies and everything. And it's like, is that something that you guys like have just naturally like progressed from just over those years of practicing together since you were young?
Yeah, I think so. I think more in the beginning, in the first few albums, I would always try to kind of keep up or harmonize everything, and it's kind of even more with the more recent stuff. I think if you were to, you know, have those clear-cut lead and rhythm roles, it's like that I've kind of tried to step back a little bit and not, you know, try to match or harmonize everything that was going on. And but yeah, I think it was just something that, you know, it's like, you're playing this, okay, show me how to play that, and I'll try to play it a little bit differently, or, you know, add a harmony to that. And we always kind of wanted to be matching up with everything we're doing.
Sort of that classic dueling guitars role.
Yeah.
Except you guys don't really duel that much. It's harmonizes so damn well.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
It's hard to say that you guys are dueling, because like in a lot of thrash metal bands, that was always like it was the dueling guitars, but like with you guys, it just flows so melodically.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I think for some reason early on, I thought there was something wrong with like playing in unison or playing in unison for too long, where it's like a lot of, you know, the thrash bands from the 80s that I like, it's like those are the riffs, like when both guitars are playing the same riff and it's kind of like front and center, it's like those are the ones that hit hard. So, you know, it's something that I think I kind of established a pattern. It's like, okay, I'll establish the riff, then I'll hop to the harmony. And it's like now I'm kind of more open to, it's like, it's fine for us to be playing the same riff and just kind of like, you know, both attacking it instead of trying to change it and morph it all the time.
Okay. So let's discuss the rest of the underground operations years, which is Fortress and Scarilius, correct? So let's talk about the transition of the band through those years and like how the band evolved sound-wise and not only writing-wise, because you guys from Kezia, it was very like a structured story, and then you guys, like, as time goes on, it's sort of less so unless like you read into it.
Yeah, I think like lyrically and conceptually, we found that Kezia was getting a lot of attention because it was a concept record, and we kind of wanted that to be a part of the story, but it seemed like it became a big focus and people really started getting inside of it, which I guess they do. And a lot of people were asking questions that we didn't particularly have answers for or want to have answers. So I think that kind of just veered us away from that. And there was still some of that stuff going on with Fortress, but it wasn't as blatant. And then kind of when we got to Scurrilous, we're just like, you know, it's like there's nothing wrong with having a collection of songs that every song is about something different, and it's more that the time period is what's being reflected with the recording.
Definitely, because that's something that with like your tour mates, Coheed and Cambria, where it's like they dedicated themselves to a story for a very long time, and it's like it must get very difficult to do that after like 5 or 6 albums. So I mean, the will to get away from that, I can completely understand.
Yeah, and I think for a band like them, it's kind of part of their identity, where it's like from the beginning that was a big part of what the band was about, and there's, you know, other elements like a comic book and it's these characters, and you know, it's something that it seems like was a huge importance to the music they were releasing. Where for us it was just like, we want to do it for this, but we didn't have a sequel to that or anything kind of extending. And then I think musically, I think just from the time of recording Kezia and with each album, just the amount of time we spent on the road, touring and getting comfortable on our amps and just learning, that was a huge time period of us really walking into a studio to record Kezia knowing nothing, and then kind of just getting a lot more comfortable in that environment and with our instruments, and even kind of learning a little bit more about songwriting and stuff like that. So I think that was, those progressions kind of happened just because of all the experiences we were having playing music.
Definitely, without a doubt. So once it came time to step away from underground operations, like, you guys really seemed to relish the opportunity to move forward and sort of do things on your own. So, like, was there a specific, like, reason why, like, suddenly, like, right out the gate it was just like, awesome, we're in control now, or what was the feeling behind that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely like a liberation, and this was not just with underground operations, but with our label in the US as well. I think we needed those pieces in place in order to establish our band.
Okay.
But once we had done that to a point, we at least wanted to give it a crack, seeing what we could do for ourselves. And so I think that was really empowering. I think now that we've experienced, I see the role that and importance record labels can have into developing and continuing to develop a band.
Yes.
And it's definitely a give and take, but I think it was really important to us to at least see if we could do some of the things we thought we could do, and just really get an understanding. I think it's with anything in the business, it's like, until you actually do it yourself, it's like you'll never appreciate what it takes to kind of do the things that other people are doing. So I think it really opened our eyes to what needs to be done, and it was a really good learning experience for us. And I think as far as stuff in the future, it's experience and options that we have. We kind of know what one way what that offers and where that could lead, and we know where the kind of the other way is as well.
Okay. So, is a band that has been progressive and has tried to move their sound forward over the multiple times of releasing albums, you guys have constantly joked that, oh, well, we're gonna lose half our fan base on this one, but is that something that you've actually found, that, like, a lot of people have turned on you over the years if you guys have, like, tried to progress your sound, or do you feel like a lot of people are growing with the band?
I think it's hard to know the people that you lose, because if you don't see them anymore,
I guess,
unless they're going around, I guess, making comments online or whatever it is, and however much you can take that as an actual fan saying something. So it's like you don't meet a lot of people that are like, oh, I used to like your band, and then you put out this record, and it's because you don't see those people at shows and stuff like that. And
It's fair.
As far as I can tell, with the growth of the band, it seems like the shows are still getting bigger, and people know the music and the newer music as well. It's hard to tell. The last tour we did was a 10-year anniversary of Fortress, so those are some of the biggest shows we've done as a band to date. But it was hard to take that as, like, is this band growing, or is everyone just coming out of the woodwork because that was the record they like? So it was hard to get a metric. But yeah, I think for the most part, it seems like people, as much as they like the old stuff, we're trying to, play the new stuff, and it seems like people know it as well. So
Okay. So with that in mind, having just said that, for this tour, are you guys trying to break out some new songs? Are you playing, like, a lot of stuff off Pacific Myth? What does the set list look like? Are you guys constantly changing it up every night, or?
No, pretty much for a tour we'll write a set, and that's the set.
Get
Unless
comfy.
something doesn't go over well, or something happens, then. But yeah, we don't have the liberties of kind of being like, oh, what do you feel like playing tonight, and jumping into it. But yeah, it's pretty much a mixture of songs from Fortress on, and then we're also playing one song that is going to be on our new album as well. So but we kind of wanted a balance of everything. We're not the type of band that kind of comes out and just plays the new material. We're, you know, we like playing the older stuff, and we know that people like to hear it, and it also is like sometimes those songs, it's a little bit of a break in the set. When you're focusing on new stuff, it's a lot more concentration with stuff you played 1,000 times. It's just, it's nice and easy and fun, and it's easier for us as a band to get into that stuff.
Okay.
If we're not having to like focus on everything we're doing.
Okay, so we'll get to what the new music is going here. We'll work through the off-label stuff here. So once you guys actually like didn't have the label there to do some of the planning, some of the booking, like do you guys find that you were a little bit overwhelmed? Did you guys like already like have a solid plan in place for like who was gonna handle what? Like this is like when we plan on being in the studio. Like how did that all work out?
As far as just like scheduling and like time management, as we kind of got older, we found that we could do stuff like that ourselves, because it was like if we were talking to someone about, oh, when are we going to do this and that, like we just would have to communicate with them for them to communicate with us, and booking a studio or all that stuff, making a budget for an album or whatever it is. It's like sometimes it was like more taxing to bring more people into it.
Okay.
So that wasn't too difficult. I think when it comes to like manufacturing and releasing and stuff like that, we didn't know too much about it, but it was one of those things that we just kind of had to do it. And it's like now Luke especially, he's been doing all the vinyl stuff, where it's like now he's learned how to do that, and he knows how to do the layout and you know, talk to the manufacturers and stuff like that. And it just, I don't know if it's a control thing, but it just seems easier. Instead of like, here's our artwork, sending it to someone and have someone send it to the distributor, it was kind of easier to just
take out some middlemen and
just talk to them directly. I think the only thing that we really realized was like when you're, you know, paying for runs of vinyl, it's like you do need to have you have to like bankroll that yourself. So that was the thing that was kind of like, we were investing a lot of money just into manufacturing products, which eventually it would turn over, but it's like we never had to deal with that investment side of it.
Yeah, to put that initial foot in and be like, oh man, I really hope this sells. Yeah,
but it's like, I think it's a little bit easier to do that when you're investing in yourself, where you know, okay, well, if this doesn't sell online, we'll take it on tour and it will move. And when you kind of know that it does turn over, it's not as scary as if you were a third party being like, well, I hope this band does well, and you don't really know the ins and outs of each artist that you're working with. So it did kind of disrupt our cash flow a little bit, because we would just keep putting money back into printing more vinyl when they run out, kind of thing. So that was the only thing that I think about doing it yourself is, you know, people look to a record label as a financier, and that is a huge benefit to have someone that's willing to take that risk and help kind of facilitate that process.
Yeah, for sure. So once you didn't have like other voices in the process, did you guys start taking more liberties with the music you were writing?
No, like that was one thing in the past that we'd always kind of delivered our final recording, and there was never any pushback, or it's like, I think we just established it's like, we're going to give you a record and this is what you're going to get, and it's like there was never any pressure, or I think afterwards when a record was done, then at that point anyone we were working with would be like, okay, this song jumped out to me and I like this, and help with like the selection of what they thought was, okay, this should be the first song you release and stuff like that.
For like singles and stuff.
Yeah, but it was out of what they've been given, not like, oh, this song could be a single if you rework this and that. There was no songwriting advice or stuff like that, which now it's like having someone do something like that would probably be helpful for us.
Yeah.
But it just kind of became, it's like, here's the record and it's done. That was that. So, but everyone that we worked with was understanding about that. And
Okay, so also partway through this process, we mentioned that in 2013 that the lineup of the band started to change up. Did you guys have problems finding new members to replace Mo and Arif, or did you guys just naturally find people through friends? Was it an easy transition bringing them into the band as well?
So when Mo left the band, it was before we recorded Volition. So we decided, but we had already written some of the songs for that record, so we thought we're not going to try to look for someone to bring them into the band and then be like, okay, first thing up is record this record and stuff like that. So for that, we just kind of hired a session player for that.
Okay.
And then we thought from there, we can find someone that will tour with us and will become a band member. And that wasn't hard because Mike, who's playing drums with us now, was a friend. I think that's the biggest worry for us, is not if someone can play the material, it's if we can sit in a van or tour with them for months on end and still like each other. So that's always a bigger worry than it's like someone can get better at their instrument, but it's harder to shape a personality.
Well, it's definitely true. If you don't gel, it can make for a lot more trouble than if somebody's missing a spot here or there.
Yeah. So that was nice, just because we knew Mike and we had toured with his band before that, so there wasn't any surprises with that. For RF, we have a guy who still plays bass for us. He's recording on the new album as well. His name's Cam, and we joke because he started doing merch for us, and then he did lights, and then he did sound, and then he recorded our album. He's done everything under the sun for the band. And he toured with us for a while, but he was pretty vocal about it not being his passion to be a performer and part of the band, where he likes doing sound and likes being in the studio and stuff like that. So I think that was something that was difficult for us, because we liked having him around, and he was a really great bass player. But it was kind of hard to be like, okay, now we're gonna try to find someone, because we can see that you don't want to be doing this, you'd rather be doing sound. So right now we have a guy that tours with us named Eric, and he's a great player, and it's been going well. But that's just been, okay, we're gonna get you for tours, and Cam's still gonna play bass on the album, so it's kind of this in-between thing. But
so you don't really have to commit to anything necessarily until you guys feel comfortable enough to be like, hey, you've earned the spot.
Yeah, and he's seems happy with that arrangement, and he's a really he shows up to practice, he knows everything, very easy, very professional, and it's nice to have that relationship. And so, but I think since we don't really have a reason to find someone, be like, you're the new, we don't need to do an audition and find our Robert Tagilo.
Yes, of course.
Though we wanted to do that and be like, okay, here's your signing bonus, $100. Give him a check.
You owe us money. You have to invest
you can pay
in
it back.
vinyl. So I'm sure that you are all excited about the new season of Making the Band that's going to be coming up with the members of Protest the Hero. But until then, I still have a lot of questions for my guest, Tim Millar. We're going to discuss their latest EP, Pacific Myth, and the band's decision to release the album as singles over a period of 6 months. We're going to get into some of Tim's inspirations, and of course, we're going to talk a little bit more about the future of what Protest the Hero has going on, what they're cooking up in the kitchen. Hopefully it's hot chicken. So, We are going to get right back into that soon, but before we do that, I just want to take a quick moment to thank everybody who has gone ahead and grabbed themselves one of these Desert Tiger t-shirts that we have printed off. We are working on some more designs as we speak. We're hoping to get like a cartoony one going on that's going to be like super hilarious, I think. But until then, we gotta move t-shirts to get t-shirts. That's just the sad reality of it all. So I just want to go ahead and thank everyone that has picked up a shirt from us, because like I said at the beginning of the show, this podcast is 100% fan supported. So to all of you who subscribe and who share the episodes, those are the free ways to help us out. I am so very thankful. But to those of you who have actually put your faith in Desert Tiger enough to grab a t-shirt and show it off to your family, your friends, hell, even your enemies, thank you so very much for doing that. Alright, we're going to play a little bit more of Protest, then we're going to be jumping right back into this interview with Tim Millar. So I hope you're ready for another track off Pacific Myth. specific myth, you guys sort of went a different route for releasing it. Rather than going the full EP at the start, you guys decided to go through Bandcamp and do like a song per month for 6 months. Was there a specific reason that you tried that specific like approach, and how did it end up working for you?
Yeah, we just thought it was interesting. I think we also thought that instead of giving someone an album on a release day, giving them a song, every month on the same day or whatever it was, it just is kind of more exciting. We like the subscription. We thought of like the magazine that you would get every month, and you'd be like a show up and like, oh, this is, but it wasn't like this anthology of stuff that I don't know. We just kind of thought breaking it up like that would kind of create the suspense and excitement. And it's nice that like after the fact, it's like it was cool for all the people that were a part of that, but it's like now it's just like another release where when people see it, they don't particularly know that that's kind of like how it came together.
Oh, it was awesome while it was happening, because as soon as I heard about it, I signed up, and like every day that the song would show up, it was like Christmas, because like
yeah,
wake up, new music.
Yeah, it seemed like even though it was like a smaller little a community of people, that it was like people that were really excited about it and really into the idea of being a part of that, and there was dialogue like back and forth, so it's like it was cool for us because we could put out a song and then the next day have people that were part of the subscription saying what they liked or didn't like, or just seeing that direct connection and that excitement right out of the gate. And it was kind of it was inspiring to be like, okay, let's bust our ass for the next song, and it kind of helped. I guess when you're doing a record and you're removed from interaction with people, you kind of just like put all this time and effort into something, and you're like, let's hope that this is good or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was just nice to have that direct response and do it on a song by song basis, when opposed to putting out an album when people were like, it's all right. It kind of just slowed down the pace of things. So
okay, so you mentioned earlier that you guys are playing one new song that is going to be featured on a future album. So do you guys still plan on following the DIY method of self-release and everything for that album? And what details can you give me about the recording and the process that you guys are currently in for the creation of said album?
Yeah, we haven't entirely made up our minds on how we're going to release it, but we've decided to fund the recording process ourselves. I think at that point, after when it's done and you've paid for everything out of your own pocket, it makes it really hard to sell it and give it away to someone else to exploit it. So we'll see. We're open to discussions with people, but once you've paid for your own record, it's kind of hard to find someone to work with you and give you the value
to give you the right distribution deal.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you pay for this thing and then you just immediately give it away, it's you kind of just it just kind of like squashes the excitement about it. You're like, oh, I did this myself, and we kind of put this all together, and so we'll see. We're definitely open to it. We're also open to doing it ourselves and seeing how that goes. Right now, all the instruments are done, and then vocals are going to be done in October sometime.
Oh, wow.
So it's been a pretty long, spaced out process where we started in January. So it's going to be like a year. It hasn't been a year of straight recording. There's just been blocks throughout the year. So it's very spread out.
A lot of refining.
Not even. It's just been people's schedules, and okay, we'll do guitars here, and then we got a tour, and then we can fit in this here. So we've just been taking our time, and it's kind of nice because I think you forget about like I was recording in January and you forget about what you did then, and then you kind of hear it after the drums are done, you're like, oh. So you have kind of fresh ears on it. So I'm looking forward to it. We're taking our time, and once it's done and we have a finished copy in our hand, I think we'll kind of figure out what we're going to do with it.
So probably looking like sometime in 2019?
Yeah, I hope so.
Fantastic. I hope so as well. Okay, so let's get a little bit more into you as a person. So we mentioned earlier that you had a lot of influence in thrash metal bands and otherwise. So who were some of your guitar gods? Who were some of your high school idols? Some of the people that like got you through those moments in high school, and like those things that like really, those bands that really inspired you forward?
Yeah, I think when I was in high school, I kind of started off listening to a lot of like punk and punk rock, and that's where I started learning guitar with the bands like Propagandhi and NoFX and Pennywise and stuff like that. And a lot of those bands, they always like had like a metal tinge to them, so it was like really fast stuff, not a lot of like really technical playing, but you know, they were kind of crossing the genre a little bit. So I think that's why that led to some more guitar-based metal stuff. And I kind of at that point went back and listened to like Metallica, Megadeth, and a lot of like shred stuff, and Paul Gilbert, Racer X, and stuff like that. Paul Gilbert's a big one that's been a huge influence because he's such like a unique player, but also has crazy chops, but he's also tasteful.
Yeah,
I find. And then like a lot of like proggy stuff like Dream Theater and Symphony X and all that stuff. I think in that period of like being in high school, the amount of like music I was consuming and going after, it was just like one would lead to the next, and it's like it's really at that time of your life you kind of put a lot of effort into researching music and following and finding new stuff. I was like really hungry for that stuff. And I think a lot of like bands like Unearth and Killswitch Engage and that kind of hardcore metal that was pretty popular in the early 2000s, that definitely had an influence as well.
Okay, cool. So over the 17, 18 years of writing music and touring as a band, do you have any favorite stories from being on the road? Maybe things that went really good, maybe things that didn't go so good that you can look back on with a fond eye now?
Yeah, it's hard to kind of pinpoint just one off the top of my head. I think the biggest thing is when you listen to bands growing up and then you end up kind of being on tour with them and kind of not entirely being able to like put yourself in that teenager headspace where you're like, I'd be losing it if, you know, if the 14-year-old version of me could like look 5-10 years ahead and, you know, see these opportunities. But I think, yeah, just definitely being around a lot of bands that I looked up to and being able to tour with them and get to know them and just being able to like watch them play every night. I think that's been the best experiences, where if you take the time to like watch and learn and ask questions and just kind of observe, it's like you can take a lot away from that. And I think those are opportunities sometimes squandered because people, you know, just don't take the time to do that. But yeah, I can't really I'm trying to think of a particular thing of something I learned a lot of lessons the hard way. But I think it's important to take something away from that instead of just victimize yourself.
It's true. You have to actually learn from those moments rather than beating yourself up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So really odd question, and I know that the answer is a no. Are we ever going to see more cheddar cheese in the mousetrap?
Yeah, I'd say probably no. I should ask Rody. That was his masterpiece. But definitely not live, because when we did a tour, a 4-day tour, and it was us and like 3 other comedians. Mm-hmm. So it was like weird already, but it was basically just me like driving to the shows, setting up everyone's gear. So unless we had a tech, which we couldn't afford, but when we're getting paid like $200 a show. Yeah, but yeah, I should ask. I'll ask Rody.
So basically, as long as you don't have to set up all the gear, everything should be okay.
Yeah, do all the logistics.
Can get like a tour with you and Cancer Bats where they can do Bat Sabbath and Cancer Bat set, and then you guys can do cheddar cheese and then protest.
Yeah.
All right. So at this point in time, you've toured with like quite a few like well-known bands and have gotten the chance to share the stage like through festivals and other things with quite a few of your heroes and otherwise. Is there any bands that you haven't had the chance to possibly play along with that you would, if things fell in line, would definitely be like, oh yeah, we're making that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be cool to go out with some of those like punk bands that I grew up listening to, like a NoFX or Strung Out, or yeah, we haven't really kind of mixed ourselves into that world. I think we've shied away from it because we're like a little bit heavier and more technical.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think anytime we've been at a festival where a band like Good Riddance is playing, or bands that I really grew up listening to, it's like we don't know if it would work, but it'd be kind of cool. And then there's also this like humility of doing a tour with bands like that and how that all works. But I think that'd be pretty cool. I think there's a lot of bands that I don't necessarily think we would fit well together. That'd be like a cool tour. Like the other day I was thinking it'd be like if we did a tour with Muse, which would never happen, and it's like that's a way bigger scale than anything that we have ever even seen.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's just, I was like, how do you get from that point to being like, supporting a band like Coheed and these bigger venues to like someone that, even if you're opening for an arena tour, it's like, how do you get to that point? So
it's a pretty big transition, and it's a lot of bands have attempted it and then shied away.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that would be one. I think I often like think about opportunities like that if they were to come along, we'd definitely jump on it, but I'm not hopeful that stuff like that would come along.
Okay. All right. So over the years of touring, have you found that you have a must-have item for the road, or like comfort food, or something that just you need when you're on tour?
I can usually get by with very little, but I think I like on tour I like to go for runs, and I think having like a good pair of running shoes is pretty key. But yeah, I guess outside of that, like most things you can, if you forget them, you can get them. And I think over the years I've gotten a little bit more realistic. I think I used to pack like everything. I feel like when I was going on tour, it's like I have to bring everything I could possibly need and try to think of all those instances, where now I just try to keep it a little bit more realistic, and like especially in this situation, like I'm gone for 2 weeks. So it's
like what are you really gonna need, and what are you actually gonna have time for?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I bring like 5 books on a tour and like read half of one and be like carrying around this, all this stuff. So I think I've gotten a little bit better at not being such a pack rat on tour.
So you just mentioned that you are a reader. So what kind of literature do you like to get into? Is there a specific genre? Do you like to spread it around? What are your favorite like styles?
Yeah, it really depends. Like right now, I'm just reading a book of short stories, so I like that because it's not too committal. You don't have to invest too much time in like. So I find stuff like that, it's really easy to digest, especially if you're in kind of a environment that's, sometimes people are talking and it's hard to concentrate and stuff like that. But yeah, I'd say that, and then I found like poetry, it's kind of the same thing. It's just something you can pick up and read, but you're not too invested in a story, or if you put it down
Giant
for
600-page novel.
Yeah, if you put it down for a week, you're not gonna, lose. You have to kind of remember.
Forget
stuff.
details, the
Yeah.
backstory.
So I find stuff like that's really good for when you're traveling and.
Okay. Cool. So you said that you're at like the opening level for Coheed. Who are some of the bands that are at the opening level for Protest, or maybe a little bit underneath that you guys are keeping your eyes on?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to, keep your ear to the ground, and anytime we've done tours where we are headlining, we kind of get submissions sent to us. That's like a list of bands, and it's unfortunate that we can't have the time to like go to every band and listen to everything. And if a name sticks out to you, or if you know someone in one of the bands, it's usually they're gonna kind of have a better chance.
Natural.
But it's definitely one of those things where it is important, I find, to like find those bands that are kind of on the way up and will be bringing out different audiences, and especially I think maybe a younger audience, because even though we're not old, I think if you can find people that are younger and bringing out younger people, that's going to maybe have more longevity.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like I said, the process for us is we get a list of names. Unless we have like suggestions, we get a list of these bands are interested in this tour. What do you think? And we kind of go from there.
Okay. Alright, so let's step outside music and books. What do you do when you're not writing music and on the road? Besides reading, of course.
Yeah, so for the last 2 years I've been working part-time doing like bookkeeping and music business for our business management for a few other bands. So that's been something that I've been getting into. It was something that I always kind of would oversee for Protest. And there was like always a lot of frustration with not understanding a lot of stuff that was going on, so I kind of wanted to learn as much as I could. And then seeing that there's a huge demand for that skill set in this industry, because a lot of people don't have it, or they put it as a last resort, or they think they can't afford it, and make a lot of bad financial decisions because of that. So I've been doing that. I'm married. I have a kid that's 3 years old, and I have another daughter on the way in a month. So
Congratulations.
Yeah. So a lot of family stuff. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Before I ask my last question of you, where can the audience find more about you and Protest the Hero?
Yeah, usually our website, protesthero.ca, or any of like the social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. That's kind of where most of the content and information can be found.
Okay, cool. So for my last question, we've talked about a little bit about the future of the band. where does your future fit in there, and where do you see yourself as well as the band in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think definitely as we kind of all hit middle age, we're slowing down as far as, our eagerness to travel around the world 8 months out of the year and stuff like that. But I don't think the magic and excitement of like making music, recording music, and all of that has worn off. So I think we're going to continue to make music, and I always feel very grateful and thankful that we have such a strong fan base, and it gives us, I feel like the time that we put into it at a young age has kind of given us this opportunity to take our time, and now that we kind of have that, it makes it a little bit easier to choose the pace at which we kind of continue. But I think there's going to be a lot of activity, hopefully less time between albums and stuff like that, and we're going to try to focus on like giving people more content, so videos and just stuff that is kind of constantly bringing people to kind of see what we're up to, and kind of a deeper look inside of whether it's how to play parts, or how we recorded this, or how we wrote this, or just kind of some more insights into what we're doing and how we did it.
Do you guys plan on videotaping a lot of the process along the way? Because I know that that's something that you did with Pacific Myth. That was something that got added into the people that had pre-ordered and everything else, was video content. Is that something that you guys continue on planning to do, is the documentation?
For the recording of this new album, we haven't really been shooting much. Mike, our drummer, he's just got a nice camera, and he's really been getting into that stuff. But it's hard, if he's shooting it, he's not in it, kind of thing. So yeah, there hasn't been a huge documentary portion, but I think we're just kind of more interested in quick things, like here's me playing this riff, and here we are at this show, or whatever it is, even if it's just goofy, whatever, but trying to kind of be more consistent about giving people material like that, and not have a long form, here's a 20-minute episode about this process, but kind of just have a bit of a more of an online presence.
Okay. Try and discuss things more with your fans and be a little bit more involved that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Tim.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for thinking
Honestly,
of me.
thank you.
Great to meet you.
So, somewhere there's a 14 or 15-year-old Colton freaking out a little bit slightly, but rather than dwell on his feelings, I'm just going to go ahead and thank Tim Millar for allowing me the time to sit down with me and share the story of Protest the Hero, the past, the present, the future, and the role that he has played along in that journey. I had a great time meeting Tim. Hopefully I can sit down with more of the Protest boys once they get that new album out and rocking sometime in 2019. Fingers crossed. But until then, like I said, huge thank you to Tim Millar. I also want to go ahead and thank you for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. If you can go ahead and leave a review, maybe subscribe, maybe share the episode. All those options are free ways to help out this podcast and to help us grow. We are almost 1 year old. Yeah! And of course, if you want to take that one step further, you can always reach out to us and get yourself a Desert Tiger t-shirt so you can show all your enemies just what they should truly hate, because haters gonna hate and winner's gonna win. So until next time, I will see you again.